Bethann, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you. It was an absolute joy to dive into your story, especially with all that's going on. It was just a breath of fresh air. And I think I knew about you. I knew about you before, and it probably was because of Kadeem, because I had kind of a crush on him growing up. But then I did know that you were the agent of most of my most favorite models. You know, I grew up loving Rashumba and Veronica Webb. And I just found myself learning so many new things about you, and it was just so exciting. And the lasting feeling was, I want more. So I'm wondering, when is this book coming out? I need to know more.
Film though. The book is nothing like the film. Everyone, they just want to have more of Bethann or something in that way. Yeah. But for your knowledge too, nobody, I don't know anyone who actually knew all that was on the screen. People have known me 20, 30 years and they never knew that.
Wow.
I had a story. I was never trying to do a film about me.
Yeah.
Invisible Beauty was another project I was working on about the industry, and I was going to do an expose on the industry and tell the story through 3 models. And I was working with a different director at that time, and it kept being put on it kept being put in a dormant state because we weren't fully funded. But eventually, one time, I once I started seeing that the industry started to change from my actions, and then I decided, well, I don't need to do this documentary now because it would be démodé, it would be passé. So someone would say to me, yeah, but someone needs to do a documentary on you. I mean, yeah, that's good that you're doing that. But I heard that a couple of times along the way. And one day when I was trying to think of how we could have told that other story, it would be more difficult to tell that story. Mm-hmm. Because you get the truth from, say, the people who are not using girls of color. They're not going to sit and tell you, explain it to you. Why? Because it's not necessarily a negative. Sometimes people just go in a rabbit hole. I didn't feel so good about it. So I decided just one day, I said, okay, I'm going to make the film about me, because then it'd be just much easier to tell that whole story.
Yeah.
And then I also changed, eventually I was no longer with the same director. Frederick had actually done my 3-minute piece for when I got the Fallon's Award from the CFDA. And so he was then, sort of like got to know a little bit about me, got very interested in me. And so we started to communicate when he was in America, when he was around, and I would talk to him from time to time. And that's how we built that relationship.
Amazing. About how long ago was that you started this process?
In 2014.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. It was fun to watch. Sort of, it felt like it was in real time of you guys piecing it all together. What was it like when you first watched all the footage together for the first time?
Well, the footage that he had that he liked was 7 hours, but he knew he had to get it down. So he got it down to 4 hours, and he showed it to me.
And how did you feel watching yourself?
That was the first time I felt like there was a story.
Okay.
Because I did the film, we finished the film, we traveled, we did everything, but I never really thought I had a story that was worth, I didn't think, well, I had more archival footage than I thought I had. Mm-hmm. I had, once they started getting it together, like the guy who actually, one of our producers who actually does all the archives, he was impressed that I had as much as I had, because it was very organized. Because Keegan, who's my assistant, we just a few years before, I was saying that I need to get my things in order to put it in some place. Mm-hmm. And so we started then getting this complete information from Julianne Richardson, who has the History Makers. She taught me about where you're going to place your things. I never even thought about that. So I started then having my 2 assistants at the time start to really take care of anything I had that was editorial, archival, anything. And he started to digitize it. And also, by the time we were getting ready to do the film, we had a lot in order.
Yeah, I mean, you had just looking at all your photos and stuff, I was like, you could have a coffee table book of just these photos.
I was never a print model, so I don't have a lot of editorial or print material of me in that way.
Mhm.
because
No,
I was a runway model.
yes. I was talking about just your family photo, like you had just candid photos and just from the times. I just enjoy looking at those. But what was there a part of this process that you really loved?
Well, I think if I say the total process is the results. I
Mm-hmm.
I love what I've loved so much is um, going around to the film, taking the film around to all the film festival we were invited to,
Mm-hmm.
and listening to the audiences.
Yeah.
I think for me that's my strongest thing that I appreciate. I like the film very much. When I saw it, I thought, wow, okay, okay, and everybody says we want to see the 4 hours. Every time I tell that story, but even the process of seeing the part on Tyson, I mean, when you saw the longer version of it, that could have been a whole series just him alone. I mean, it was very good.
Yes, I mean him and then even Aman when she's recalling your first meeting, and it was such a you could feel her emotion, like it still felt quite present. You know, even some of the pain
Oh,
from it. Did you when you saw her talking about that? Did you recall it in the similar way? Do
no
you
similar
remember?
what happened, except for that everybody who tells a story about me, and that way it's always a little off because Kadeem Fran is the only one was accurate. Everybody else, I mean, oh no, surely James and Kyle there because they were they were my foot soldiers. I think yes, the Iman thing is really very noted for both of us because it's so memorable because of that moment. And there was the fact that I was, I got down. I mean, everything she explained pretty much, except for that it was in a dressing room where I had two other models that because I ran the design studio for Stephen Burrows at the time, so I had two models who also did what I used to do, which is showroom models, where they put on the clothes. So they stay all day long with you, and if a client comes in and needs to see dresses put on, they put the clothes on and show the clothes. So they were the two girls who were like, "What are you doing?" They were because Iman wasn't welcomed in
Yeah.
America as such, and a lot of people had a lot of anxiety about it because she, it seemed like they had to go that far. It was just a hype story that just
Mhm.
didn't sit well with a lot of Black Americans.
Wow. Hmm. I also had a moment when I was watching with all your activism and when you're advocating for Black models and models of color, did you ever get any scary pushback, like any like anonymous letters or phone calls, or I was just curious with this day and age of social media and people just saying mean things. I was wondering if you experienced any of that.
No, I
No.
work. I live with fashion designers and designers, and it's not that. That's not that world.
That's great to know. Yeah.
The and I think when you think about what you say now, people have such practice of being able to say anything they want to you. What
Mm-hmm.
I was saying was so intellectual
Yes, you could see that too.
that it was really something that made people think. It's the way I approached it. It's the way I believed. I believed in the industry.
Yeah,
I,
you could tell you loved it. Yeah.
I well,
Well, you wouldn't be there. It seemed like you wouldn't be there if you cared. If you didn't care, put it that way.
yeah, I grew up in the garment business, so I have a really a passionate feeling for the garment business, the fashion business. But at the end of the day, I really basically had the relationship always with the designers that came along at that time, from Perry Ellis to Donna Karan to Anne Klein to Calvin Klein. All of those guys, were people who knew me very well too. So this is many years later after I have the model agency. Then that's when I wrote the letters, and the letters went out. No, I never had any kickback like that. I just had immediate response. Immediate,
Okay.
immediate response meaning they responded, and by the time the letters went out, uh, September, say 7th, 8th. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, London was already changing things. Paris was already changing. You saw a Black girl in Celine, and you saw, what Armani was doing, and that was just changing each region.
That's great. Yeah. No, but it took it. They needed a voice. They needed you, and I commend all the work that you've done. But here are a couple of things, and I know you said the book is way different, but there are a couple little things, and these aren't questions, but there are little things that piqued my interest that I am wondering if it will be in. Like you'd mentioned at the top of the film that you were a manager of a band in the Caribbean. And then you had a moment where you were saying that you had a Swedish lover. And I was like, I wanted to dive more into your relationship with Donald, and I mean all of the 70s. And then you had this moment in when you were talking to the group of the fashion industry, and you said, "Well, I spoke to Fidel this morning," or something like that. Was that a joke? I mean, it's like I want more. I want more.
I'm very witty, and I, you know, it's like my stand-up moment.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Fidel. When we were coming up, we were coming up here in New York back in the '60s. Yeah,
I believed it. Yeah.
they were important people because they were revolutionaries. So,
Yeah.
and they, you know, got rid of people who were oppressors. So in the end of the day, it was a quick joke, but it's
Yeah.
funny that you still hear it so clearly in the film.
Yeah, no, it's a moment. It made me laugh. But yeah, so what brings you joy now? What do you do? I know that you have a place in Mexico. That was another moment in watching. I was like, when I see people that are so New York, I kind of wonder how they exist outside of New York, like where their favorite places are to be. And I'm assuming, is it correct that Mexico is sort of your happy place?
Also, New York City too.
It still is. Yeah.
Oh, it will be. I'm a real New York City kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
mean, you can tell.
Day I die, and I like my home upstate. I
Yeah.
like when I'm upstate, I don't think about New York City. When I'm up down in New York City, I don't think about upstate. It's the same thing because I move so much, and I think that's the reason why. You know, when you have places that you have to go to, maybe that's the reason why I can still love New York City so much because I'm not like stuck in it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look at what's happening. You know, you come back and say, "Oh my God, look what they did over here." Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's
I
always
love my
changing.
neighborhood, so you know, yeah. I do love. I always felt from the time I first went to Mexico, there's a calling. Like I've lived that life before in another life,
Mm.
another human. Um, so I've always loved Mexico. It's true, and that was my first. That was my first country. My first airplane ride was
Yeah.
to Mexico City. So yeah, and you know, then you start to move. Like then I met this guy, and then he started to make me come to Stockholm, and then you know, when I was in Stockholm, I met this other guy. He and two guys took me to Ibiza, and then that was back in the '70s. So everything was so magnificent in those days, you know, because everything was so small and less.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. But yeah, so what brings you joy now? Like what do you know, like to swim, or like, what's something that you do just in your, sort of chill time?
I long to get to the hammock, but I don't get to it as often.
Ah,
I
the
was
hammock, yes.
looking at the whole time I was at my house of state, and I just never got it at once. And it was my birthday week, so I was really being very lazy. But I think, you know, because I do care for myself very much, I like going to, you know, get body scrubs and go into saunas and steams, and you know, I get massages naturally always anyway. But I do love, you know, taking space from things, and I like taking space from people because I'm very people oriented and always involved. So I like being on my own, and I do have to finish this book, but because of the film is so demanding. I mean, so
Yeah.
much you got to hustle. You know, you got to really to get people to go to the theaters. You know, you need, and we're not a big team, and neither is and good as our distributor is, and really they are. You know, it's still small, it's still boutique, and it's not like the big ones. You know, so you have to really hustle a bit. And, you know, now you want to go and let people see that you have something from the academy. So then you have to, you know, it's a lot of work. So how do I sit back down and write? I'm
Yeah.
always trying to push this other ball continually. So once again, the film takes precedent. I'll finish it. I only have, you know, I have less than half the book to finish because they have half already, or more than half. So I do have to finish that. But I do tell a lot of stories, you know, about many people. Yes.
Wonderful.
the way my life was.
Well, no pressure. I'm gonna read it whenever it comes out. But I really appreciate this film, and I'm glad you made it. And I really thank you for being here today.
Oh, I'm so glad. And you do tell me a little bit about you and what this is.
I'm an actress out here in LA, and I've been working for CherryPicks for the last 3 years. But yeah, I'm a filmmaker as well. I just wrote and starred in a film about a proud Black woman who is struggling with the implications of her love for the classic rock band Journey, and a lot of what you had said in your film about being called white girl, and so that's a whole nother thing that I would talk to you about.
When I went to high school,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but those things wounded me where you were just like, I don't care. It seemed like you didn't care, but I care about my people so I just wanted them to know that I wasn't trying to be like, it bothered me. And so I wrote a story about it.
Well, it honestly, even as a young person as I was, it's annoying to hear it, but I knew I was there for a purpose, and
Yeah.
it blew my mind what I accomplished in that school.
Yeah.
And I walked away from something that seemingly could have been exciting, but obviously it wasn't. I chose it. And what was so great, being young and being a latchkey kid and all that, and you didn't have to, explain to your parents because they didn't have any involvement in it. They just listened to whatever you said you wanted to do, you did. And they were like, all right, that's what you're doing now. And I really did care. I knew there was a journey to be had there and success too.